Maya thought she knew what love felt like, until she found those keys hidden in David's drawer. Keys to an apartment she never knew existed, to a life he was living with someone else. 4 years of planning a future together, and she was just half of his truth. When she confronted him that night, holding those golden keys like evidence of her own blindness, she realized something devastating. The heart that had loved him so completely was shattered beyond recognition. But what Maya didn't know yet was that sometimes, when a heart breaks completely, it has the chance to rebuild itself differently. Love can leave you broken, but it can also lead you to a stronger, more authentic version of yourself. Join me as I share Maya's journey of healing and discovering a new kind of love, one that embraces self-compassion and prioritizes her own well-being. Let me take you back to that moment when everything changed. Maya could still smell the coffee growing cold on the table when she opened David's desk drawer. She was only looking for a phone charger, something simple and innocent. But she found the keys. 2 golden keys attached to a keychain she had never seen, with an address scribbled on a crumpled piece of paper. 1247 Valencia Street, San Francisco. Her heart raced. They had been living together for 2 years in Seattle, planning to get married next summer, and he had never mentioned anything about San Francisco. When David came home that night, she was sitting in the living room, the keys in her outstretched palm like a silent accusation. His face lost all color. "Maya, I can explain," he said, but his voice sounded distant, as if he was speaking from underwater. The explanation came in pieces. An apartment he shared with Sarah, a woman he met at a work conference 2 years earlier. They weren't just roommates. They were a couple. Maya realized that while she was building a life with him, David was building another life with another person. She wasn't just a deceived girlfriend. She was the other woman. But how could such an elaborate lie go unnoticed for so long? The discovery of David's double life left Maya questioning not just the relationship, but her own ability to perceive reality. As a landscape architect, she was trained to observe details, to notice when something was out of place in a project. But she had completely failed in her own life. In the months that followed, she began reviewing every moment of the past 2 years, searching for signs she should have noticed. The frequent business trips to the East Coast that were actually to San Francisco. The weekends when he was unavailable because he was visiting family. The phone he always took to the bathroom. How could she have been so naive? Paranoia began consuming every social interaction. When Emma, her best friend, cancelled a lunch, Maya immediately assumed she was being avoided. When her boss praised a project, she wondered if he had ulterior motives. The world had become a place where everyone wore masks, and Maya no longer trusted her ability to see through them. She stopped going out, stopped accepting invitations, stopped believing that people were who they said they were. After all, if David could deceive her for so long, anyone could. What if the person she trusted least now was herself? Maya developed a protection system that bordered on obsession. Every new person in her life was subjected to a mental investigation process that would make a detective proud. She checked social media, looked for inconsistencies in the stories people told, and created silent tests to detect lies. When Marcus, the engineer from the 10th floor, started showing up at the coffee shop at the same time as her, Maya immediately suspected manipulation. When he finally asked her for coffee, she spent 3 nights awake researching him online. She found old photos with an ex-girlfriend and immediately concluded he was lying about being single. She cancelled the date via text, claiming to be overwhelmed with projects. But the truth was that the fear of being deceived again had become a more powerful force than any possibility of human connection. Maya had convinced herself that it was safer to assume everyone was lying than to risk finding out she was wrong about someone. She preferred the loneliness of certainty to the vulnerability of trust. After all, if she didn't open up to anyone, no one could betray her. If she didn't love anyone, no one could break her heart. It was simple and cruel math. Zero trust equals zero pain. But was this protection really keeping Maya safe? Or just keeping her trapped in a smaller version of herself? It was Emma who forced Maya to seek help. After 3 months of watching her friend isolate herself completely, Emma showed up at Maya's apartment with a bottle of wine and unwavering determination. "You can't continue like this," she said, watching Maya in pajamas at 3 in the afternoon, surrounded by unfinished landscaping projects. "You're punishing yourself for something he did." The conversation was painful and necessary. Emma made Maya realize that she had stopped living. She wasn't just avoiding relationships, she was avoiding life. The next day, Maya called Dr. Sarah Williams, a therapist specializing in relationship trauma. The first session was terrible. Maya cried for the first 20 minutes, unable to form coherent sentences about what had happened. But as the weeks passed, something began to change. Dr. Sarah didn't just help her process David's betrayal, but began exploring deeper patterns. "Do you always put other people's needs before your own?" was a question that echoed in Maya's mind for days. Slowly, she began to realize that the problem wasn't just David. It was how she had lost herself in the relationship long before discovering the keys. What if healing wasn't just about getting over David, but about rediscovering who Maya really was? Therapy became the most important ritual of Maya's week. Every Tuesday at 4 in the afternoon, she sat in the brown leather chair in Dr. Sarah's office and deconstructed another layer of her life. "Let's talk about your needs," the therapist said frequently. At first, Maya couldn't even identify what her needs were. She had spent so much time anticipating and meeting David's needs that she had forgotten her own. They started small. Maya learned to say no to extra projects at work when she was exhausted. She learned to ask for help when she needed it. She started practicing yoga on Saturdays, not because someone suggested it, but because her body craved movement. She returned to painting, something she hadn't done since college, covering canvases with colors that reflected her emotions instead of hiding them. Emma became her anchor during this process, showing up with dinner when Maya was too tired to cook, sitting in silence when Maya needed company without conversation. Slowly, Maya began building a support network, not just people who comforted her, but people who challenged her to grow. She realized that healing wasn't a destination, it was a daily practice of choosing herself, even when it was easier to get lost in others. But was this journey of self-discovery preparing Maya for something more transformative than she imagined? The turning point came 6 months after starting therapy. Maya was finally able to talk about David without crying, without anger, almost as if she were telling someone else's story. "I forgive him," she told Dr. Sarah, then repeated the words to see how they sounded in her mouth. "I forgive him." But the most important discovery came next. "And I forgive myself too." Maya realized she had been carrying 2 guilts. The guilt of being deceived, and the guilt of not noticing the signs. But now she understood that loving deeply always involves risk, and that trusting wasn't a weakness. It was a brave choice. She began to see her relationship with David differently, not as a waste of 4 years, but as an experience that taught her about her limits and values. She learned that there were signs she ignored not out of naivety, but because she chose to believe in the better version of the person she loved. This ability to see potential in people wasn't a flaw to be corrected. It was a gift to be protected. The difference now was that she wouldn't abandon her own values and needs to preserve someone else's potential. Maya finally understood that accepting the past didn't mean justifying what David did, but honoring what she learned about herself in the process. What if this acceptance was the first step toward a completely new kind of love? Maya was watering the plants in her apartment when she had the epiphany. It was a ritual she had developed in recent months. Every Sunday morning she spent an hour caring for each plant, observing their growth, adjusting the light, removing dry leaves, while caring for a fern that had almost died during the first months after the breakup. She realized she was doing for her plants what she had never done for herself, paying attention to their needs, being patient with their healing process, celebrating small signs of growth. "I love myself," she said aloud to the fern, testing how the words sounded. It wasn't the first time she had heard about self-love. Dr. Sarah talked about it constantly. But it was the first time Maya understood that self-love wasn't about being selfish or narcissistic. It was about treating herself with the same kindness she treated her plants, her friends, even strangers on the street. It was about honoring her needs as valid and important. But how exactly could she put this self-love into practice in her daily life? The first time Maya applied self-love practically was in a work meeting. Her boss was pressuring the team to work over the weekend on a project that could easily wait until Monday. The old Maya would have volunteered immediately, eager to please and prove her worth. But this time, she took a deep breath and said, "I can't work this weekend. I have important personal commitments." It wasn't a lie. She had promised herself that weekends would be for rest and self-care. The interesting thing was that instead of criticism, she received respect. Her boss simply redistributed the work and life went on. Maya realized that when she valued her own time and energy, others valued it too. She began applying this philosophy to all areas of life, saying no to social events when she was exhausted, asking for help when she needed it, expressing her opinions even when they differed from the majority. Every no she said to others was a yes, she said to herself. What if this new self-love completely changed how she related to other people? Maya began establishing boundaries like an architect designs foundations, with intention and precision. When Emma started calling every night to vent about her own turbulent relationship, Maya gently said, "I love you and want to support you, but I need at least 3 nights a week just for myself." When a client started sending messages outside business hours, she responded, "I'll answer this tomorrow during work hours." When her mother made critical comments about her love life during a visit, Maya replied, "Mom, I know you worry, but I won't discuss my personal life today." Each boundary she established was like planting a fence around a garden, not to exclude people, but to protect what was growing inside. Maya discovered that healthy boundaries didn't push away the right people. In fact, they attracted people who respected and valued who she really was. People who resisted her boundaries revealed their own intentions. Maya was learning the difference between conditional love and genuine love, and choosing only the latter. If this story is making sense to you, if it resonated with you in any way, subscribe to the channel so we can keep telling stories like this. And before we continue, leave your like. Thank you for your support. But was Maya ready to test these new boundaries in a romantic context? Marcus appeared in Maya's life almost accidentally. They literally bumped into each other in the elevator of the building where they worked. She carrying plants for a new project, and he with a stack of technical plans. When Maya's plants fell, Marcus helped collect them, making knowledgeable comments about each species. "Do you understand landscaping?" Maya asked, surprised. "My mother was a gardener. I grew up around plants," he replied with a genuine smile. For the first time in months, Maya felt a spark of interest in someone. But this time, instead of running from the feeling, she observed it with curiosity. The fear was still there, a voice whispering about the risks of trusting someone new. But there was a stronger voice now, a voice that said, "I survived before. I can survive again. And this time, I know who I am." Maya realized that vulnerability wasn't about eliminating risks. It was about choosing risks that were worth taking. And maybe, just maybe, getting to know Marcus was a risk worth taking. But how would Maya know if she was really ready or just repeating old patterns? Maya's first date with Marcus was different from any date she had ever had. Instead of trying to impress him or figure out if he was interested in her, Maya focused on discovering if she was interested in him. When Marcus suggested an expensive restaurant, Maya said, "Actually, I prefer something more casual. How about that coffee shop with plants in the window?" When he asked about past relationships, Maya answered honestly, "I went through a difficult breakup and I'm learning to trust again. I need time and patience." Instead of apologizing for her needs, she presented them as facts. Marcus listened without judgment and said, "I appreciate your honesty. I'm not in a rush either." Throughout the conversation, Maya paid attention not just to what Marcus was saying, but to what her body was saying. Were her shoulders relaxed? Was her breathing natural? Did she feel comfortable being herself? The answer was yes. For the first time, Maya was using her intuition not to look for signs of danger, but to assess genuine compatibility. She was learning the difference between paranoia and discernment. What if this new approach revealed that Maya had more control over her love life than she imagined? In the third week of conversations with Marcus, Maya made a courageous decision. She told him about David. Not all the painful details, but enough to explain why she sometimes needed time to process her emotions, why she valued transparency so much, why building trust was important to her. "Thank you for telling me that," Marcus said. "It must have been incredibly difficult." Then he did something David never did. He asked how he could support her. "Is there anything specific you need from me while we build this friendship?" Maya was touched by the word friendship. Marcus wasn't assuming they were automatically heading toward a romantic relationship. He was respecting her pace. "I just need you to be direct with me. If something changes in your life or feelings, tell me. I can handle the truth, but not lies," she said. Marcus agreed without hesitation. Maya realized that real vulnerability wasn't about sharing everything. It was about communicating your needs clearly and choosing people who respected them. But was this new way of relating preparing Maya for something even more transformative? 6 months after meeting Marcus, Maya realized she had found something she never knew she was looking for. A relationship where she didn't need to diminish herself to fit. Marcus didn't just respect her boundaries, he admired them. When Maya said she needed one night a week just for herself, Marcus responded, "I think it's incredible how well you know yourself." When she expressed her opinions, even when different from his, Marcus engaged with genuine curiosity. But the most surprising thing was that Maya realized she wasn't trying to win Marcus's love. She wasn't constantly monitoring his mood, wasn't adapting her personality to please him, wasn't sacrificing her needs to keep the peace. Instead, she showed who she really was and discovered that was enough. More than enough, it was valued. Maya finally understood that when you love yourself completely, you attract people who also love you completely. Self-love wasn't just preparation for finding someone special. It was the filter that ensured you attracted the right kind of person. But had Maya really learned to love with a completely different heart? The most notable difference between Maya now and Maya from 2 years ago was that she didn't need Marcus. She wanted him in her life, appreciated his company, felt happy when they were together, but she didn't depend on him for her self-esteem or happiness. Her Sunday mornings were still dedicated to caring for her plants. Her Tuesdays were still for therapy with Dr. Sarah. Her Fridays were still for painting. Marcus fit into her life without dominating it. When he traveled for 2 weeks for work, Maya missed him, but also enjoyed the time alone. She went out with Emma, worked on a personal garden project, read 3 books. She realized she had built such a rich and complete life that a relationship was a complement, not a necessity. "You seem so balanced," Emma commented during lunch. Maya smiled. She finally understood the difference between being alone and being lonely, between wanting someone and needing someone. Her completeness didn't come from Marcus. It came from herself. And now, was Maya ready to completely redefine what it meant to love and be loved? Maya was in her garden, planting tulips for the following spring, when Marcus asked if she was happy. It was a simple question, but Maya stopped to really consider it. Yes, she replied, surprised by the certainty in her voice. I am happy, and she was. Not because she had found the perfect man, or because her life was free of problems, but because she had learned to love in a completely new way. She loved Marcus, but not with the desperate dependence she felt for David. She loved him with the confidence of someone who knew she could survive without him, which made choosing him even more meaningful. Maya had discovered that the strongest love isn't the one you can't live without, but the one you choose every day because it enriches a life that is already complete. Her heart wasn't just healed, it was evolved. It was a heart that knew its own worth, that established healthy boundaries, that chose vulnerability as an act of strength, not desperation. Maya had learned to love again, but this time with a completely different heart. And perhaps that's the greatest lesson of all, that true love begins when you learn to be your own home.